today's discussion, we will try to take up a few use cases what we do to our industry also. So focus, stay tuned, and thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Start thinking and be the first like IBM as always. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Over to you, Taira.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for always associating with MRCET and giving us inspiring insights. Thank you for awareing our students about future trends in data science. Thank you for giving your valuable time. Now I would like to introduce our next keynote speaker, Sri Dharma Atluri. Sir have overall 16.5 years of IT experience. During this, he has held multiple roles as an executive architect, product area lead, practice area champion. He has deep experience in business intelligence, advanced analytics, delivery, uh, delivery, complete design, implementation, upgrade, migration projects for clients in different industries. He has been a guest speaker in multiple internal and external events around cognitive expertise and digital transformation journey enablement for clients. With this brief, I invite Sri Dharma Atluri to present his keynote address.
Thank you all, and really nice of everyone here to have me here, trying to share some of my experience, and as Samba said, about what we do as IBMers and why we are proud of it, and how we want each of you to actually be part of the overall ecosystem, so that we can make ourselves successful by making you successful, right? Because it's always an actual ecosystem and not about an individual which makes it happen. And that's the spirit we need to kind of think about, saying what is in it for me is what we can do for ourselves to help others, to help ourselves, right? So that's the motto I always keep thinking about whenever I start talking about a project or an organization activity and any initiative as an actual contribution, right? Because that's how we can add value and at the same time help ourselves in our careers. Yeah. So with that, let me start sharing my screen and provide you with some information of what we feel would be critical, and anything else in terms of questions we can have a Q&A maybe at the end for about 15 minutes today and tomorrow to address your queries, and I'm sure you'd be having a lot of them, right, given the nature of the topic what we're talking about. So first and foremost, let's quickly talk about what really are we addressing in this particular session, right? So before I start off, I just wanted to quickly have the disclaimer on the screen understood by everyone. It's just summarizing that the information presented is sort of confidential and proprietary to IBM and SAP, depending on which topic I'm presenting. I will be sharing a summarized version of the deck with no client references so that it can be referred or it can be used for your own reference later on after the session is over. But anything related to a product roadmap and everything is as of today. So in the future, when you're about to make a decision, please do refer to the latest roadmap and features on the websites available so that there is no overlap of information, right? And also in terms of strategy and all, this is more related to what is available as of today, and any change is something I think more for each of us to actually keep ourselves up to date in order to avoid any potential conflicts or other scenarios, right? So this is very, very important. Um, Again, this is more to just safeguard IBM and SAP as organizations, right? I think if you attend SAP events or IBM events, this is more frequent, which you would see. moving on. So to start with, I think Kailash Rao garu and also Sama garu has also touched upon this topic a bit. We did talk about how the actual journey of every organization is changing, right? I mean, this is one of the actual slides which I've been using quite a bit, and I'm sure everyone would have already realized this by looking at social media or by looking at different TV programs or different other seminars and webinars and so forth. The six main things, right? This it's called as Internet of Things, IoT, and I'm sure everyone would be aware of it, are around the online activity where the data has become the new oil. Earlier, what people used to say was oil was your actual measure of wealth in terms of what your real position is. But what I would say now, along with other SMEs in the industry, is the data is the new oil, right? Any organization which owns the data, when I say owns the data, let's say if there are third party organizations which like Facebook, Twitter, right, where they actually own the data of the activity by the users and what kind of trends they follow, what sorts of decisions they take, what sorts of patterns we can identify, and look at where Facebook and Twitter are today. It's merely the fact of how much data they own and what sorts of knowledge they possess. And what they're doing with that is what is also important. And also, it's about smart devices everywhere concept, where we already know pretty much everyone owns a smart device today. If not, I would say every single person out there, right? And along with that, what is also critical is the data explosion. Suddenly what we see as a trend is everything is monitored, right? From the actual activity of in the morning when you wake up, when you exercise with your fitbits, right? How you actually capture your actual workout related metrics, what sorts of heart rate you have, what sorts of actual fat you're burning out, what is your actual duration of exercise, along with the area or the type of location you're exercising in, right? And followed that by the actual type of programs you watch, what social browsing you do, what is your trend in terms of pattern. Everything is recorded, right? Everything is actually somewhere or else has a trace of it where you actually leave a footprint. And along with that, what you also see is more and more every device which is manufactured now comes with a sensor so that it could be monitored remotely in terms of what its actual behavior is or what it is contributing back, right? With that being said, what is also important is how is this transforming the industry, right? What is it so important? We understand data is there. We understand there are companies which are already using it. We understand there are organizations which are actually changing their product lines based on the trends evolving. When I say the product lines based on trend evolving, IBM, for instance, itself, if you think about it, where IBM was there before was a more of a hardware manufacturer, if you remember, right? It was more about laptops, it was more about CPUs, it was more about supercomputers. IBM is still in supercomputers, I'm not saying no, but it has let go of its hardware manufacturing capacity because IBM has realized over the years that's not an industry which IBM would want to focus on, right? It actually identified the trend of services, it identified the trend of cloud offering, it identified the trend of analytics, right? Artificial intelligence with quantum computing. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of quantum computing, but IBM is one of the top SMEs, I would say, in this area, right? Where we have our own quantum computing centers established and contributing towards research, right? But why did that all happen? One, the driver was identified, which is with regards to power of analytics and hyper digitization. Two, it realized that it had to evolve in its business model, right? So digital transformation is the actual enabler in order for people to suddenly start thinking about AI, ML, data science, right? Cloud adoption, These are now in your topmost agenda for every client in terms of a CFO or a CTO when you discuss with them on what they are looking out for in next few months. Earlier, people used to talk about this a lot, but no one really knew how to adopt them. Now, the actual adoption rate has increased multifold, which means these have now become areas where a lot of job opportunities are actually waiting out there. And what used to be advanced analytics earlier, what used to be something which was niche and something which only experienced people could do, with all the technology out there right now, has opened up for every starter, which means you don't have to worry about your experience, you don't have to worry about your actual knowledge. If you are willing to put in the effort, if you are willing to actually take time and participate in things being passionate, right? For example, if you go on to websites and start signing up for these call for code events, there was a recent call for code event which IBM conducted globally, both for internal and external practitioners, right? So globally as well, which means you had an opportunity to pick a use case, you had an opportunity to apply IBM solutions through POC based approach, proof of concept based approach, and put together a working prototype which you can then publish and IBM would judge and actually give you close to, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, just to give you a picture, it was worth $50,000. Think about it, right? 50,000 US dollars. That was the amount of support IBM has been willing to give to the ecosystem in order to encourage solutions both to address COVID as well as for climate change. And it doesn't have to be dramatic, right? I mean, it could be as simple as a tracker. One of the ideas which I saw was a guy creating an app, right? A mobile app, which could allow people to share content. When I say content, for example, I have wheat, I have rice, I have sugar. I just, instead of giving it to some third party donating team, I'll just sign up onto this app and I will call out, hey, I have half a kg sugar extra today, I would like to donate. Please let me know. A person in need can sign up, identify where that is available, and then request for it and agree for a common drop off location. And with safety always, with security and safety built in, without your identity known, you could actually drop off and hand it over, right? That's as simple as that it could be. And there was another idea where a person created an app where they could upload all this digital content around whatever topic you're trying to search for, right? You localizing it for your own group. You can actually, let's say, for example, you're a group of 40 students and you want to create a group of your own interests where you can actually share knowledge, not having to Google every time. And whatever is the best content, you keep rating it. Because, for example, if 8 students have gone through it, and if all 8 of them actually have loved it, instead of the ninth student going out there again and researching all over from the scratch, they could simply go into this personalized silo local links and focus on what is important. Bottom line summary, it's all about how do you think, right? How do you actually put it forward? And I think also Samba touched upon the point of why IBM is leading in patents. It's very simple. Did you know? I'll give you an incident, right? I'll go into the AI and ML piece immediately after that, after the cloud conversation. There was a lady along with her kid, right, from a supermarket trying to go back to home. And while she was placing the content into her car, whatever she brought, she placed the kid on the car, on top of the car, and was doing all the stuff. When she was done, she forgot her kid was on the car and she sat in the car and took off, right? Luckily, nothing happened, and she just, after let's say 15-20 minutes of driving, realized her kid was not in the car. And when she got out, she saw the kid was still in the car, right? But the actual takeaway from that story is the idea of an actual tracking location for your kid, or a tracker or an alarm of something's on heavy on the car, right? That was patented. As simple as that. You don't have to have a huge innovation to file a patent. It's just a matter of how do you innovate your thinking process, right? Who knew that an actual backspace button on the laptop could actually be a patent as well, right? I mean, it's all about whatever your daily problems are, right? It could be studying. You might suddenly come across an idea saying, how do you improve, or what is a problem statement you have come across, and how do you improve it? That's all it takes to file a disclosure and file a patent for, right? Another example I'll quickly give you is there was an actual idea due to this floods and all this where people could not be reached or the locations could not be known immediately, right? So whenever we actually have these drones sent out, the drones are actually connecting to your mobile devices based on their IMEI numbers and getting that signal back saying whether they're active or not, and using that IMEI number to remote activate the cameras to see whether the person is around or not. Obviously, it is only in the disaster mode when you can activate it, or else privacy comes into play. But with that small idea, it actually got patented and by IBM, right? So the point here is you have to be passionate, you have to do that research, you have to be aware of yourself on what an industry is doing, what is it that they are preparing, what is it that they're converting or manufacturing, and how can you contribute to it, right? If you are thinking about, well, I'm just going to actually do what they're already doing and follow the track, you're going to fall behind, right? You have to think about how do you actually come up with ideas, and some of them can be duplicate. That's okay. It's just a matter of how do you cultivate that behavior, which will take you a long way. And that's the three boxes which I have here on the right hand side, which is about the individuals of how you empower citizens or empower your employees, how do you actually build the ecosystem, how do you improve your network, and how do you connect to the consumers who are not willing to consume your product, how do you actually sell it, right? I think in more often than not when you talk about these MBA meetings or MBA interviews, I'm not sure if you heard about it, based on my experience, I was given a pen and I was asked to sell it, right, to the people who are interviewing me. And it's about they being completely stubborn that I'm not interested in it and how I can actually sell it, right? So given that context, in terms of what we're talking about from an actual driver's perspective and how it is impacting the society, every industry has to actually evolve. And that's exactly what I have here in terms of the digital transformation framework. So one in the bottom bottom side, going to the from left to right, is enhance, extend, and redefine, which is about more on what the customer value proposition is and how do you do the what segment. And the left hand side from actually from the bottom to the top is create, leverage, and integrate. And it's about how do we do it, right? What do we do to actually deliver the value? Whereas what is the value which is on the left to right on the bottom, right? So as long as you understand this framework and you start placing the components in everything what you're trying to do into these, the journey can be actually made more easier. And just to take to the next step, the same framework, there are different paths you can reach to the final journey of transformation. Either you create the how part of it, which is the path one, where you create the solution, where you already have the actual offering which you want to take out, right, in terms of how you want to deliver it, and then you reach out to the actual value to the customer. The problem there is technically what you might think is critical might not end up being critical to the customer, right? But it doesn't mean that's a wrong way. Sometimes you develop the technology, you innovate the technology, and then you think about use cases, which is fine, because it's just a nature of how some people think of what kind of offering can be provided, right? So it's nothing wrong in it, but that's just one way, and that's the reason why that is also clearly documented, and there is always a challenge around it. You just need to figure out how do you address it. Path two is more about you know the use case, you understand the industry, you understand the actual value proposition of what you need to offer to, and you build on top of it, right? You actually then build a technical solution around to address it. So path 2 is bound to be more successful because you already know the pain points of what you're trying to address and what the acceptability would be. And the better example for that, I mean, I wouldn't say a good example as such, but COVID-19. The use case is trying to come up with a vaccine. So you already know what the actual value proposition is and how big of an impact it can be on the environment. But what you don't know is a technical solution to address it. And that is the reason why path 1 is being taken right now, where path 2 is already known. Path 3 is where neither, I mean, it's combination of saying that either of those are already available, which means that you already have the what and the how, and you are actually having the right stakeholders to take a drastic curve of innovation, which means today you are doing something and tomorrow suddenly everything has changed instead of evolving, and it's still successful in terms of transformation. There are a few examples you would be surprised which you are actually using day in day out and which belong to path 3, right? So I will give example of each of these paths on how you can start thinking from your own perspective on how you can contribute back and how you can gear up yourself for the challenges out there, right? So some examples of path 1 are, one of the customers we had was Guarantee, right? It is a Turkish bank and it was an early adopter of enabled technology which is digital and also had infrastructure enabled by cloud, allowing the customers to have paperless processes across people, right? So that people don't have to worry about invoices being mailed to them and all that stuff. They were able to do everything online, and they were able to go more of a proposition where they could actually, based on that, now introduce mobile banking, ATM network through SMS password, right? Allowing them to actually integrate with mobile operator to get the OTP for their transactions and so on and so forth, right? So what they did first was they enabled the technology, they adopted the actual cloud infrastructure, they got everything together as a service offering of touch, basically paperless process and all, and then they extended that as a use case to customers. So they went through path 1 and then to the path 2 point to reach the point of transformation. Similarly, Ford, even before they could reach out to the customers, what they did was they again enabled themselves being a cloud infrastructure basically deployment, and they went ahead and actually got a supply chain analytics capability enablement into their manufacturing, which means that everything they did internally in the organization was through proper information processing of IoT technologies, right? So they had proper enabled integration in actual manufacturing cycle. What they did after that was they brought in something called as voice activated services, iPhone integration, active car assist, right? They can press a SOS button in the car and it'll alert the actual call center people to say that, hey, the owner has a problem, right? Either the car has stalled or there have been an accident or they're having a health emergency and so forth. Yeah. And then what they also did is they actually extended the revenue stream by the services offered. So first, technology part. Second, they embedded all of this into the cars even to begin with, not thinking about whether the customers would buy it or not. And by default, they were not activating it. And when customers got a preview of it by satellite radio and all that, right? They install all of it, and you would have heard about this trial, I mean, runs, right? For example, even on online or whatever, every software or everything you do, they have this trial period where it is free of cost with limited features. And when you actually get your hands on it, when you see the value out of it, and then they say, hey, by the way, after 2 months your service is ending, if the actual service was really good, what do people do? They sign up for it, right? They actually end up paying for it. So that's how you're actually extending revenue, because you anyway were actually going to invest in it. But now because of this investment, you're actually ending up making more revenue. Right? So these are examples of path 1. Path 2 is more about how the value was identified before, and then the actual technology transformation or the delivery was itself done. right? So Sony was one example where they created a broad level of offerings in terms of business value at first. They went ahead and they actually started creating more of content. They actually created more of digital libraries and all that. And then when they saw that people were interested in this, they went ahead and enabled the cloud infrastructure to deploy them for everyone to actually access it, and along with new services being added to adopt it technically, right? Before it was all on premise, but with the library enabled and then delivering it. Similarly, Meredith, right? So what they did was they just collaborated with all these other clients like Kraft Foods, Chrysler, Wells Fargo, on how they can actually support them with their custom publishing and email social media campaigns by doing small campaign runs. But when they saw the value out of it, they went ahead and technically actually delivered that through a cloud model, where not only were they able to actually publish it, but through machine learning and AI, actually we're focusing on customer centric campaign runs technically, which means they were more focused with less decline, which increased the actual rating to the client itself, increasing the brand value, right? So these are examples of path two. Path three, like I said before, are complete transformational, where they didn't think about whether customers would be interested. They didn't think about the effort or the investment which they have to make, and just went ahead and made it happen, right? So Best Buy, for example, where they didn't think whether customers would adopt gig services or 12/4 services and all, right? I'm sure you have heard about it. So where Best Buy, to address people's concerns, they actually came up with a dedicated gig squad. The purpose of this gig squad was they would help people talk about a product technically, because a lot of people would do a lot of research before buying a product, and they don't want the salesperson just to say yes, it is very good, yes, it's awesome, right? I mean, I don't want that. What I want is someone to tell me specifically on features when I'm trying to buy a laptop, who can go into the technical details of my audio drivers, right? I mean, analytics drivers. What do I get out of RAM, right? What is my memory? How much actual processing power does it have with regards to multiple cores, right? And also what I would need is someone not just selling me my printer, but if I'm willing to pay, who can quickly come over, set up my printer, get it working, and be available if it gets into any issues technically, right? So that's the way they actually created an offering, because of which their actual product sales increased multifold, because people now of all other vendors started giving Best Buy their preference, right? And they actually started taking that service from them, and irrespective of the product being new or not, taking their advice to either swap out products or make warranty extensions, because sometimes it's not just about selling a first time product, right? It's about how do you extend the warranty after that, how do you keep supporting it, how do you make customers move from old technology to the new technology at the right point in time, helping them, giving the right advice, right? So that's the journey which Best Buy had. Netflix, I'm sure every one of you were aware. Once upon a time, it was actually running very, what I would say, it was in losses, right? Because like Blockbuster, it was only willing to do some video rentals, right? They actually had a library of videos which they used to rental, and they were not getting much profit out of it. So they innovated. What they did was they said, you know what, we are not worried about the investment, we are not worried about the actual cost what it comes with. We know the business use case where people cannot come to Blockbuster, let's say, or Netflix to physically rent a video. Why not mail it, right? That was a major transformation which happened before online streaming came through. And then to better it, they didn't stop there. What they did was they went ahead and digitized every single video what they had, to have an offering available online, so that there is no more people trying to go to video shops, trying to get rentals and stuff. That transformed the industry completely, right? They became the flag hosters for in terms of what they can offer to the business back. So it's all about different paths and how every client chooses to go through it, right? And there is no right or wrong in either of these paths. It's about how and where and what level of aptitude do you have as an individual, as an organization, to adopt to it. And each of you, even as an individual, would have a journey similar to either of these, right? It's not just about organizations here. And the main reason for me to spend time on this before I can jump into the cloud offerings was to talk about what are the basic drivers, what triggers the adoption of cloud, AI, and ML, so that when you start thinking about use cases, you know about most of the businesses out there. You've heard about Geo, you would heard about Reliance, you would have heard about Vodafone, right? You heard about Airtel, you heard about Amazon, right? There are a lot of clients out there. You just need to start thinking, saying, how can I contribute towards it, right? What value can I add, and how are the actual ideas which you are getting are going to be documented? And always don't discount it saying someone else would have already thought about it, right? Always put it on a paper, maintain a diary, or maintain a file somewhere where every idea you have got is listed down, no matter small, no matter big. Even a daily problem what you see, write it down, right? Because you never know when that, along with the solution, is going to transform the industry, right? So with that being said, now that you are aware of three parts, I will just highlight very quickly to summarize on this journey of digital transformation, of how you could either be an industry transformer, or a value redefiner, or a digital enhancer by the technology enablement, or an operator which can bring together on integrating these solutions, right? And where you belong to which quadrant, it all depends. Nothing is bad or nothing is, wrong here. It's just a journey which you are about to start on with. Yeah. So finally, before the cloud journey starts, it's about business model innovation, customer and community collaboration, cross channel integration, insight from analytics, digitally enabled supply chain, and networked workforce. I'm sure you would have kept hearing about this over and over again in different conversations. One, I've already mentioned, how do you keep track of your actual innovations, right? What ideas you get, how do you actually document it, how you can improve business models. Two, about how do you collaborate, make your actual brand known to the outside world. Keep blogging, right? Whatever ideas you're getting, whatever work you're getting, get into a habit of writing blogs, right? Don't think that no one will ever read it, or it might not be of relevance. You never know who can actually end up focusing on it and offering you a job. Forget about even a job. It is about a brand you're creating for yourself, because after 6 years, after 8 years, after 10 years in industry, one of the things which people really care about is internal and external eminence. And when I say internal and external eminence, when you actually end up getting into a job and you're in a senior role, what people think in order for you to be promoted to a distinguished engineer is how eminent you are in external world also, right? As a brand. So a journey which you start today can go a long way as long as you make it a habit, right? The fruits of it might not be known immediately, but as you actually progress over, you never know who is looking at them and who can offer you with what. So don't ever think that people are not giving attention to it immediately, right? So first, make it a habit to start with. Start blogging, start writing about your experiences. For example, this journey right now, right? Whatever webinars you are actually attending, maybe a few of you start actually summarizing it as blogs and post it out there in social media, talking about your journey, and have an account in LinkedIn for sure, right? From now, create a profile for yourself, talk about what your profile is about, talk about what your experience is about, right? Talk about what your hobbies are. Every activity which you do, publish it over there, right? You could be doing a code program or a hackathon, right? Or you could be attending a webinar, post it saying that I'm excited about it, I'm attending this. So what you're doing is, while you are not saying that someone should give you importance just because you're attending it, people will start thinking, oh yes, this guy is interested in AI/ML journey. This person is willing to actually spend time. They've shown interest in communicating, right? Sometimes it's more about communication. The small things go a long way, and that is exactly what it is about customer and community collaboration, right? How do you keep contributing to social networking tools and creating a brand for yourself, right? Also about insight from analytics. There are so many websites available out there with data sets published, right? Where you can actually, without having to worry about someone giving you a system access, you can end up creating proof of concepts for yourself, applying machine learning algorithms, right? Python, for example, there is an open source library available, right? Execution means scenario, where you can install it on your laptop and start writing Python code in order to consume the data and start publishing insights, right? Make it a habit. No one is going to tell you that it is going to be required for a job, right? Make it a passion, because the moment you make it a passion, it won't sound to you like a burden. And the reason why I'm repeating this again and again is because it has to be made a habit. It cannot be that someone is forcing me, so I will do it, right? The moment you make it a passion, it will be of great value to you. And finally, and not last but the least, it's about how you digitally enable the supply chain, which is more at a higher level, not at individual level, but it adds value to you, right? So with that being said, what I will do is I will quickly get on with a conversation on what we can discuss with regards to the cloud point of view, right? So before we start off, I'm assuming every one of you is aware of what cloud can offer, right? So I'm not going to get into the details of cloud definition, what kind of cloud options are there, but I will very quickly summarize one quick thing for sure is more about, from a cloud point of view, there is a public cloud, there's a private cloud, and there is a hybrid cloud option, right? So public cloud is where it is maintained and hosted by a service provider, either as IBM, Google, right, Microsoft, or Alibaba, and so forth. And what actually you get there is you only host your application there, but everything in terms of maintenance, everything in terms of actual space allocation, everything is managed by the vendor itself, which means your data, even though there are there are major confirmations, or there are major a lot of statements made around data privacy and all, saying not to worry and that everything is okay, but there are apprehensions or there are doubts by many organizations about public cloud. As far as private cloud is concerned, what you know is, even though it is all maintained by the vendor, it is unique for a organization. There is a cost implication, obviously. It's actually more cost to the vendors, but that's what it offers, right? And then there is your hybrid cloud option, where it is your on-premise versus your cloud scenario, either public or private, both coexisting together, where not everything has to be on cloud. So while there are three different types of clouds and available out there, what is important to understand is the journey of how you think about it. So if you actually start planning from now, right? If you actually start putting together a storyboard now in your career on how are you going to make sure you're going to prepare yourself to support people on a end user journey for cloud adoption. There are different phases where you get involved in, for example, of what we have put here. And what you can see here is Scott, for example, is a guy who is a CFO or a CTO and is trying to adopt cloud for their organization and is trying to put together a model which will help them sort of make sure proper journey is known so that they go ahead and deploy their applications onto the cloud. First and foremost, as an organization, we talk to them, we talk about their journey, right? We actually share to them our experience, we talk about their use cases and studies and all that stuff. And finally, once we show the demos on what the cloud can offer, they decide to take it to the next step, which is agreeing on the strategy and roadmap. And what is done over here in strategy and roadmap is evaluating what all products the client has in their landscape. For example, let me give you an example of a recent client what we've managed. So this is a major UK based media client, right, who actually had a lot of on-premise systems, and the CFO and the CTO wanted their actual analytics landscape moved on to cloud. What we had to do was we had to evaluate their landscape. We had to look at their ERP system, right? We had to look at the transaction systems. We had to look at their individual silo based organizational limited systems where each division in some cases had a unique system in place to address some critical business requirements. And we had to put together a roadmap saying which system makes sense to be moved on to cloud at what stage, what remains on premise, and what really goes on to be installed on the cloud. And that is where we leveraged SAP HEC, right? Basically, a type of cloud deployment on which the analytics landscape was deployed. And we had to put together a proof of concept to show them that your on-premise applications and your on-cloud applications can communicate with each other with no loss in network bandwidth, and also the performance and from a user's endpoint usability is not getting impacted. Once we did that, we prioritized what those applications are, and that was where it was agreed that analytics was the first component with BW on HANA and business objects, which would be deployed onto SAP's landscape, right? When I say SAP's landscape, SAP's cloud infrastructure, because SAP also is one of the providers along with Google, Microsoft, and IBM in cloud providing different deployments. Once that was done, we went ahead and leveraged IBM's best practices along with the garage method. So when you have some time, do search for what is all included in IBM garage method, right? It is a very good starter of explaining to you all about agile, all about methodology on test driven development, right? What is extreme programming, all of these terminologies which are sort of new and latest in the market, along with DevOps, DevSecOps, right? Along with also integration involved is going to play a major role, right? So all of those are detailed in the actual garage method, which is available as a methodology and as a process and as a tools as well on accelerators what can help. And using that, we were able to actually help the client move their analytics landscape onto the cloud deployment with no loss of actual network bandwidth, and at the same time giving them full advantage of high availability, disaster recovery, and all these additional non-functional requirements also addressed, along with the original functional requirements which the users would want it anyway, right? Finally, now the client has a landscape with which they are able to less worry about the maintenance and more worry about the use cases what needs to be deployed. And also due to that, during COVID situation, they didn't have to worry about someone going to the actual offices and maintaining the infrastructure, right? Because it's all virtualized now. There is no need for any the client's team members to be on premise, and it was no interruption services for them. It was just timing rather, right? And with this COVID situation, more and more now, what you will see is it has also become as a digital driver. And even though it is an unfortunate incident, but what it ended up driving every client to do is adoption of cloud, adoption of AI, adoption of ML in their journeys to remove that touch required at any given point of time with human intervention, and make it as virtualized as possible, as automated as possible, and as much as integrated decisions making scenarios embedded through AI and ML, so that it helps you onto the next journey, right? So that this is a typical end user journey map which you will see over and over again in your careers when you actually start proposing cloud adoptions to your clients. So always think about how do you put together the collateral on what is out there in the market, what is offered by what, right? What is your actual vision? Followed by what is it that you are actually trying to bring to the board in terms of how do you strategize it and how do you put together a roadmap? How do you support it by quickly getting your hands dirty and putting together a proof of concept? And this could be an approach for you to convince for a better opportunity as well. Think about it, right? So in this case, IBM could be Scott. You could be the actual person uh, trying to put yourself as an IBMer or IBM itself, and think about the journey. You are trying to position yourself for a very good opportunity. You prepare your collateral, you prepare a summary of what your point of view is, right? Earlier I talked about social networking, right? Now create a point of view document. Take a topic called cloud adoption, right? Create a deck where, or create a Word document to support your point of view, saying according to you, what does cloud adoption look like? And then from there, get on to the point of how do you actually see yourself with your journey, right? On that particular point of view of what role you're looking to perform as a strategy, as a roadmap, right? By asking the right questions to the people from your career talks. Maybe that could be the next career talk conversation, which we can arrange with a panel, saying, what does it make sense to you, right? How do you contribute to it? And then what sort of roadmap do you need to put together? Then with a trial version of a product available, every product nowadays offers you a trial version. Create a proof of concept, right? Either with SAP Analytics Cloud or with Cognos Analytics or with IBM Cloud Pack for data or with SAP Data Intelligence. Every product out there has an actual trial version available right now. Create a proof of concept, download that file and keep it handy, right? Record it, have a video recording of it. Now, next time when you go into an actual discussion with any stakeholder or client, show them that, right? Show them how you have converted your idea into a working POC and what is a minimum viable product, which you can actually give it to them as a product itself, right? Or as a solution. It could be a dashboard, it could be a storyboard, right? It could be an actual end-to-end, cloud pack for data solution for data science, machine learning algorithm applied. And then think about the effort which you have put in. How do you reduce that effort if you have to do it the second time? Because remember, the first time you do something will always have a lot of effort involved. But if you were to do the same activity the second time, what would you do to improve it? And that is what the execution part will help you with, right? And that is the value differentiator of your side of it. Because anyone can put in that effort, remember, right? I mean, if you could do it, anyone could do it. But the point there is, what would you do to actually improve it in such a way that a toolkit is put into place to optimize it, right? And then once you optimize it, come up with an accelerator. Maybe you can come up with a template for yourself. For example, you've created a dashboard. Now you have actually created a framework of dashboard around it, which you can next time around when someone asks you to create a dashboard, you will simply use that template and end up creating a new dashboard within matter of few hours or minutes, if not, right? That template now becomes a value add to everyone in the organization, because now not only are you saving time for that individual, but you're actually saving time for the organization. So think about this framework. And finally, how do you put in the process around it? Like, how do you enable yourself with things like agile framework, DevOps framework? What are the tools supporting agile? What are the tools supporting DevOps? So right now in the market, any project you go, any assignment you go, agile and DevOps is the main criteria, right? You have to be aware of this, and you have to know what agile development is, what agile iterations are, what types of agile technologies are out there, Kanban, right? And also what kind of Kaizen improvements, how you can apply it. And from a DevOps point of view, what can you do in order to actually automate this development and integration? And finally, how do you scale it? So whatever proof of concept you have created, how do you ensure that you make it completely deployable for clients? And again, as I said, it can start with a small idea, but unless you try, unless you get your hands dirty, unless you're hands-on, the scope for actual deployment in organizations is becoming less and less, right? Project managers are needed, but more than project managers, I'm not saying project manager is not a role by itself, or I'm not saying don't think of it as a role, but unless you are a hands-on, your journey is limited, because every other year there is a new technology evolving, and you have to keep your mind focused and stay hands-on and always keep coding. And this is one way of journey which you can think about it for yourself as well, right? So with that, let's talk about what could be the drivers, right, from a client perspective, from a cloud scenario, if you think about it. So typically, an end user could have business as usual where they don't think about it, right? They just have a limited monolithic three-tier application on legacy infrastructure where they don't care about cloud. That could be one use case where you can identify potential clients who are willing to move on to cloud. Second is something happens. Sometimes, even in our lives, I mean, we, I think, in our personal lives also tend to do this. Unless something really triggers it, or something really is broken, or someone really takes initiative, we won't think about it, right? Let's say, for example, um, forget about cloud. There's a new car which is out there, right? I mean, you always thought about it, you want to buy it, but you've been putting it away because you already had an existing car and you've been using it. Or even laptop, for example. Car might be a different conversation, but a system, hardware, computer sitting on your desktop, but you've been using it and there's a new laptop available out there which you want to buy, but you've just been putting it away because the hardware is working fine and the computer is doing well. But someday, suddenly, the computer breaks. When I say breaks, it doesn't stop, it doesn't work anymore, it can't be fixed. Or in your family, suddenly you've been given a new budget for buying it, or your actual family takes a decision that enough is enough, let me buy a new laptop, right? Or the actual computer itself has completely ended due to its usage because of the timeline what it has been working, right? Or you joined a new course which is not supported by that particular system, right? You want more RAM, you want more memory, you've not been able to carry out your business, your actual learning process and all. Suddenly what happens, right? These are the triggers or drivers which makes you invest in that laptop which you were looking at, right now. What also can be possible is because of new IT strategy, right? Suddenly you have now finished your, let's say, engineering, and you're thinking about a different strategy of job. And in order to get onto the job, because you're going to do a lot of POCs and you're going to do a lot of work on these technologies, you're actually going to invest on not just about the cloud, but also the process on how are you going to get new services, right? New processes. What are you going to learn? What are you going to adopt? How are you going to improve the actual effort put in to build a POC? All of this, where is you put in a strategy around, and then you plan on by what timeline what you will achieve it, and then you adopt it by deploying the actual required software. And finally, you go ahead and you improve workloads along with maintaining and monitoring it, right? Where you continuously monitor your performance and your contributions and how you can add value to it. That's something similar to an end user journey and how you actually define in a project as well. So tomorrow when you get into a job, if you're given a responsibility of selling a cloud deployment, if you go into a journey of being a technical specialist, right? In any organization, normally there are roles of architect, there are roles of technical specialist, there is a role of data scientist, and obviously there is a role of project manager, right? So, and consulting as well. So there are different, these are the different streams. And maybe some other day we can have a career talk based on what consulting roadmap offers, what architect roadmap offers. But if you think about it, this is a typical journey which you need to prepare yourself on each topic. What do you offer to the client, right? So from a reducing capex point of view, are you helping them? Let's say they are spending $1 million right now on the infrastructure. With this new cloud offering, with that 1 million drop down to, let's say, what, 600K? Possible, right? Because cloud offering does have savings in itself, so it could be possible. So that could be one driver, right? It could be about how you actually provide flexibility to the users, where they don't have to worry about VPN anymore and log into the actual cloud service without worrying about security. Could be n number of factors, but each of these topics covers that. And finally, you have to make sure you continuously improve. The moment you say you are the best, and the moment you say you are the top, pretty much you're done, right? It's time for you to retire, because there is nothing called best. You can always strive for being the best, but you can never be the best, because best is something which is like a target or a goal you need to achieve, right? It's more about continuously improving yourself, so that you keep yourself up to date, you keep yourself adding value, and you keep learning every single day, right? And that's exactly what you need to do in order to, because the competition is very stiff. And no, I'm not just talking about you guys, even for us, even for me, right? I don't know if you are aware, but even for me now, every day have about an allocation of an hour to 2 hours to keep myself up to date with the happenings in the outer world, not just in the day job which I do, right? And the actual research which I do, the actual work I carry out, in order to continuously improve on the workload. Okay. So I've just left these two slides. I will give later on in the actual slide pack, which I'll be handing over to you guys. You'll be having these. You can go through them, which is about those refactor and rebuild scenarios which are available over there. On more details on what each of them and what tools are out there to support that, so that you can start thinking about it, right? On if you want to go on being a cloud specialist, how your journey would be and what all you need to pick up, right? Whereas if you're on data science, later on I'll talk about the different technologies, but different types of career paths which you want to go on to, depending on what your background is. Okay, and so bottom line, every journey is unique, right? Like you are, every one of you is unique. There is no repetitive nature behind that, right? Everyone has your own capabilities. Every one of you is going to have your own journey. Trust me, right? I mean, no journey is going to be same. You might think that we all come from the same background, or we all are from same either ECE or computer science, information technology, and so forth. But you never know if ECE guy is going to end up being a more of a cloud person, whereas a computer science person could end up being a hardware guy, depending on what you actually really have aspiration towards. That's what you push for, and you prioritize it, right? And your prioritization would be based on what do you keep, what do you retire, what do you build, what do you modernize, what do you migrate. It depends on complexity and different scenarios, based on which your actual journey would become like this. And when I say on the right hand side like this, it's optimized, right? Earlier it was all based on prioritization on cost and benefit, but based on what you actually can achieve on the timeline, you start laying out a organized roadmap on what is the offering which you want to go on with, right? Now, now that we have talked about the journey, now that we have talked about the actual use cases, let's quickly talk about how does the actual cloud adoption help digital transformation, because we touched upon digital transformation. We talked about the cloud offerings. We talked about how typically a journey would look like, right, from an actual end user point of view or a client point of view. But how does cloud really help? And what does the hybrid cloud mean, right? Because more often than not, what you would see in the outside market is never ever will it be an ideal scenario. Very rarely. When I say never ever, the reason I say that is because we hardly see an ideal scenario where either everything is public cloud or everything is private cloud, or when everything is on cloud and nothing on premise. It's always complex, it's always multi-cloud, it is always a combination of on-premise versus public cloud versus on-premise versus private cloud, or even a combination of on-premise, public, private, all three of them together, or more different applications deployed in different cloud offerings. Because what client might end up doing is, because of the offering they might have had, they might have actually used Google for something, they might have used Microsoft for something, and they might have used SAP for something. So you have multi-cloud offering as well, right? So you have hybrid, you have public, you have private, you have on-premise, you have also something called as multi-cloud and mono-cloud. When I say mono-cloud, pretty much everything what you have in an organization is deployed only in one cloud provider. Whereas in some clients, what you will see is a multi-cloud option where more than one cloud offering is used because of the pros and cons what they offer, right? And the reason why cloud is a main driver for digital transformation, because it helps you run workloads with flexible ROI management. Right now, more than ever, what clients are requiring is a as a service offering where if I only consume it, I would like to pay for it. Think about it. You're actually going to buy a laptop, but you'll only pay when you use it. How great would that be, right? You don't have to invest in it. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to actually have, let's say, for example, a fixed cost to it, but the provider can give you with an offering where they will say, fine, you need a laptop. I'll give you a laptop, but every time you log in and you keep logged in, right? That is the time I will charge you for. The moment you log off, just because you're actually having the laptop in your house, I will not charge for it. Wouldn't that be great? Because that would bring down for an organization huge amount of cost owning an asset, right? Because I don't have to physically pay for an asset. And that is exactly what the cloud offering helps you to do that. Because as an infrastructure or as an actual organization which owns infrastructure, I don't have to own it physically, right? I will still own it, but only for the capacity which I am actually consuming and what I would need. And suddenly, if tomorrow, because of an event, there is a huge requirement of additional capacity, which is only a one-time event, I will just request the cloud provider to extend it. I'll pay for it, I'll use it, and I'll say, fine, after this, decommission it, which means I got away with my opportunity. I was able to address my requirement, and I didn't have to invest of all that amount of space in my organization to host it as a private asset, which was the case earlier, right? And that is the reason why cloud is now more than ever helping people to innovate, bringing in software as a service offerings, and also allowing people to access new data and then improving the ROI. And mainly, when I say software as a service, you would have heard about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Infrastructure as a service means I will just provide you with infrastructure, no actual software installed on it, nothing configured on it, no platform, just bare metal, right? Basic physical servers, that's it. Whereas platform as a service means I will have them all configured, have all them set up so that they are performing at the level what they need to be, right? Software as a service means not only am I going to install the software, but I'm also going to configure them and make sure people are actually getting the full advantage of it by maintaining the software also. There are three types of services any cloud provider offers. One is infrastructure as a service. Second, platform as a service. Third, software as a service. With that being said, like you see in hybrid and multi-cloud offering, look at the actual revenue which is out there in order to look out for, right? These are just numbers based on not just IBM, but in general, from a cloud point of view, what was out there. So that's the amount of money people are making in cloud industry by helping them adopt the cloud. And real world, if you look at the actual scenarios numbers, 94% of them have a mix of cloud models. Like I just said, there is never a mono cloud, right? In some cases you will see it, but more often than not, it is multi-cloud, and 67% of them use more than one public cloud provider. So which means the complexity was not just helping the client move from on-premise to cloud. It is also about how do you help the clients after they move on to cloud, continue to interact with their other cloud offerings and other cloud scenarios available out there in terms of data movements, not stopping them from moving data, but also not giving them any performance problems, but at the same time, allowing them to actually collaborate between the clouds, keep the connections open. And while you do that, ensure your security is not compromised. And from a management point of view, make it seamless to the client. What you cannot end up doing is telling the client, hey, I'm maintaining my side of the cloud, but I'm not sure about the other vendor who's maintaining a different cloud. So you better fix it, right? You better figure it out of if any problem is there. Clients would not like that, right? Clients would like a scenario where they have an end-to-end seamless integration. That is exactly where the multi-cloud management offering from IBM also available comes into play, right? There is a cloud pack for multi-cloud management where AI is built in, AI ops. It's called as AI ops. AI ops is built in order to do this management and give a complete track to the client on what performance gaps are there, and if they're losing track of any performance, what it is like, right? So you have to be very much aware of these scenarios because it is very, very important for you to have a track of what your multi-cloud offerings are. So the number of hybrid use cases which I have seen at least in the industry are cloud scaling, where you have private and you move on to public, where you have disaster recovery from public or private to another public or private, where the cost is less. Then there is a SaaS integration, which is you have actually a public or private core offering like your S4 HANA, SAP, if you're aware of it, but then with things like success factors, hybrids, right? Or I mean, more like another offering around that, field glass and so forth, where it is sitting around with a software as a service offering, right? So it's about integrating all these components into play. Then there is extend legacy, which is now a combination of both your IT and public cloud both together as a hybrid cloud, right? Hybrid DevOps, we talked about public to private. Composite multi-cloud, which is a combination of multiple scenarios. Optimization, as I said earlier, from one place to the other place to save money. Edge computing, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of edge computing, but it is more about where you actually start leveraging nodes sitting out in the network with unused raw power to gain that processing power and carry out the operations, right? So these are the different use cases of what we see in typical industry. Now you need to think about what you need to do to prepare for each of them. So based on these use cases, based on the actual components which we talked about, based on the tools what I've talked about, there are a lot of tools available out there which you need to actually start researching if you're interested in this career path, because this career path is a huge career path by itself and has a huge potential. Similar to how AI and ML and data science has a potential to it, cloud is a different story altogether, right? It's a parallel track for continuing on a new journey. So as I said earlier, you have a mono cloud and a multi-cloud option. Mono cloud, as I said earlier, it's all in single vendor. It's all maintained by one vendor, same hardware, same software, like for like, right? Of what is available on premise to being on the cloud. Whereas multi-cloud is you have choice, you have open standards base, which means you're not bounded by proprietary software, and you also have multi-vendor portability by bringing in the multi-cloud management AI ops option, which monitors the different clouds across the board in terms of their performance, in terms of their actual memory losses, if any, if there is any actual degradation of performance. It gives you a central cockpit view in order to view the actual cloud performance itself. That's your multi-cloud scenario. Yeah. Next phase, modernize ones, right? Innovate anywhere, which means that what you would want to do as a client or as a consultant to offer to your clients is provide the right recommendation by being aware of all the open source software out there and also the open standards. So what I would suggest you, if you've not already done, is get yourself up to date on around what is actually the open standard software, which is out there, open source or open standard, and also the development open standards on what you need to adhere to. Make yourself aware of it so that you actually have your skill set built on it accordingly, right? And then based on that, you can actually also extend your skill set beyond that to AI and data as well. You don't have to be just limited to cloud. If you are a cloud specialist, after your journey of cloud, what you can also do is extend your skill set to being an AI or ML person in order to start using that configuration or functionality on the cloud to further add value to the organization, which will make you indispensable rather, right? So if you have all the combinations of cloud, your AI, your ML, you're pretty much indispensable to the organization, right? So this is just to show one example of how many of the world's actual installations runs on Linux, right? This is just one example of Linux where Linux is the foundation for open. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but Red Hat Linux is like what? The foundation for the open, the actual scenario for open source software, how it is managed, how it is contributing to the Kubernetes open source, right? There is a humongous amount of potential in this space. Yeah. And if you're not aware of it, just to kind of summarize, of the Fortune Global 500, you can see the numbers across. You would be like, are you sure about it, right? The answer is yes. 100% of airlines, 100% of telcos, 100% of healthcare, 100% of commercial banks, 100% of US executive departments of top-notch categories of Fortune Global 500 category related companies completely rely on Red Hat. And that's a fact, right? I mean, I'm not saying that it is only Red Hat, but they for sure use Red Hat, which means Red Hat Linux as an open source is a major contributor in the cloud segment in order to support the actual client aspirations, right? And the five principles which we define our approach on the cloud, supported by the journey, of course, are hybrid, multi-cloud, open, secure, and management, right? It has to be open software so that people don't think that you are bounded by proprietary licenses cost, which means it shouldn't be like once I get into an agreement with you, I cannot end up using anything else, because that will bog you down from adopting new technologies, right? So that's the actual scenario of how the cloud offering should support more people by keeping it open source, which means new applications can be deployed, not just limited to the proprietary software. And obviously, while being open doesn't mean that it is not secure, right? Security is of the topmost concern and requirement being on cloud. And that is one of the inhibitors also of what stops the clients from adopting cloud. So you have to ensure your practices, whatever you're adopting, are always secure. And finally, the management part of it, where it is all about how do you give a seamless experience to the client around multi-cloud management. So maybe tomorrow at the end of the session, what I will show you is a quick glimpse of multi-cloud management tool which IBM has and what it offers, where with a monitor-based approach, it can, with a single cockpit, allow you to monitor multiple cloud offerings, what services are up and running, what is the health index, what is leaking memory potentially, which cloud has a potential downtime, if any, when it is planned, what impact will it have, so that even if I have 3 to 4 cloud offerings, I just simply have to focus on one cockpit for me to give all the information, right? Now, what we have learned so far, right? Please summarize it. We have gone through the foundation. We've talked about different services, different scenarios. But before that, the infrastructure piece of it, like you see there are different contributors to that market segment. You have IBM Cloud, right? You have Azure, you have Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud, Edge Computing, Private Cloud, and the systems which is on premise itself. So when you talk about any solution to any client, these are the different layers. The infrastructure is of all these providers. So you can actually look out for a multi-cloud architect position. So if you are deciding to get onto the journey of cloud, you have your multi-cloud architect role, where you are aware of each cloud offering, what the cloud deployment means, and you can be an advisor to a client on what the advantages and disadvantages are adopting that offering. That is a role by itself, because that's called as multi-cloud architect role. Then there comes the foundation on top of it, where it is about actually installing services, right, to both allow you to manage the hardware, more like a DBA, right? Your OpenShift or your multi-cluster management software, and so on and so forth. Then on top of that, which is all about your strategy, how do you manage it? What we will be doing tomorrow is on the advanced services, where I will be talking about both IBM Cloud Pak for Data and SAP Data Intelligence, on what it offers from an AI and ML perspective, right? On what are the actual principles of AI ladder with information architecture, which we need to focus on, and how does it help in order to achieve that. There are some examples what I wanted to talk about with regards to our actual client references on what we have done, right? Not only it's a cloud deployment, but after cloud deployment, how we've been able to help the clients use other offerings to optimize the performance and the business use cases itself by deploying Watson cognitive use cases, by deploying what we call as Cog 23 and Cog 24, which sort of brings in the cognitive flavor, right, in order to support the customers. These are some other examples where, for example, with Tribune Publishing, we use the multi-cloud approach to help them digitally transform the business model, right? Similar to the path 1, path 2, and path 3. Any of those approaches can be used to achieve that. But for Tribune Publishing, we used a multi-cloud approach in order to get them to deploy on both Google as well as with IBM Cloud, right? ExxonMobil, and again, before we actually talk about why are we talking about Google Cloud, even though IBM has its own cloud, IBM is not just a cloud offering provider, right? IBM is also a service integrator and a service provider. So depending on the client's best case, depending on the client's best interest, it is never restricted down to one cloud offering. IBM is always open to support what is in the best interest of the clients and provide consulting services to the client saying what is it is in the best interest to deploy that. Similarly, for an ExxonMobil, we actually have deployed what close to a scalable solution which can support 11,000 plus gas stations by an app, which means it's not just about actually trying to access through an integrator, but with an actual integrated model of every gas station unit can contribute to the other unit, right? Communicating on any downtime or having a node of network for processing power made them deployed on cloud. And then similarly for other clients mentioned over there, you can see it's also sometimes about enabling the change management practice itself within the organization to help them make more digitalized, right? Not more of a paper company, but more digital company. And finally, I think each layer explained further. We've talked about earlier infrastructure. Now it is about foundation, where you can look at foundation services, what we have offered, right? What are there in terms of virtualization, how you can actually have choice of more than one vendor in order to deploy the services, and also about AI ML, which we'll talk about tomorrow in detail, right? And finally, on the expertise side of it, I think we have talked about it a lot today. We've talked about strategy, migration, development, and management. These are the key focus areas in order to support through your industry, through your cloud, through your security, through your AI, and from an actual risk point of view with an actual optimized outcome, which also has automation wrapper around it, because automation is the key when you try to move on to cloud, right? That's a strong use case which comes forward. And any ITIL practice, information technology, infrastructure, modernized platform services, which you look at, does talk about first optimize, or rather first standardize, then optimize, and then automate, right? And that is possible with cloud offering, right? So with that being said, I think we will open up for Q&A for 10 minutes, and then maybe we'll go back to Samba and Kailash Garu for some closing comments before we start our AI and ML session tomorrow. Yeah, let's open up for any Q&A if you have.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir, for your very valuable inputs about today's topic. So now I request among the audience, if any doubts that are there, please raise so that those would be clarified. I request all the any of the participants to raise doubts, please.
So, thanks, Dharma. So, if you have any questions, you can ask over here, or you can leave your questions on the chat.
Yes, sir.
Five 18, you can unmute yourself and ask question. 518. Port 12, you can unmute yourself. Port 12, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, you can leave your question in chat box. Whoever has raised their hands, you can unmute yourself or you can leave your question in chat box.
Um, so, okay, so there's one question while we're waiting for others asking about IBM's blockchain. So that's a good question. IBM blockchain has a lot of open source contribution by itself again to the Hyper Fabric chain, right? So as you know, it's also an open source contribution platform which has been set up, and IBM is one of the main contributors to it by both providing use cases as well as ensuring that we actually support to the ecosystem by putting in the framework required, right? Both from an infrastructure point of view and from a solution point of view. So there is a built-in IBM blockchain offering similar to Cloud Pak for data and similar to what we have for analytics. What we also have is a built-in offering for blockchain. And what this provides you with is quick onboarding of any service what you need, and it has a required infrastructure, in terms of the nodes, in terms of Hyper Fabric channel, right, the layers, and it allows you to build use cases. But unfortunately, unlike other services, due to the niche nature of it and due to the actual maintenance required, it does need a sort of paid licenses, right? It doesn't come free of cost, even for IBMers for that matter, right? Even for me, I have a paid license where I had to pay in some money in order to do some proof of concepts. So, but the point is, I mean, we do have blockchain offering, and there is a lot of emphasis on use cases similar to AI and ML. And if you guys are interested in it, we can have a session on blockchain as well, and we can talk about our use cases over there
So,
on what we have done so
so
far.
we can have a different session on blockchain
Yeah,
over and about this session, because this session basically we have planned for artificial intelligence cloud.
yeah.
So when we meet personally, once your college session starts, we can do a lot of seminars on these particular topics.
The next
Uh, I
question
request
is,
I request students to restrict their questions about cloud today. Tomorrow we'll be having session on AI and ML.
so I think there's a question about data science. I'll talk about it tomorrow. Maybe you can keep a track of that question and then I'll answer it tomorrow. But the other question is, can you give us some leads on sources to learn cloud? So, I mean, if you actually search for IBM cloud offerings for that matter, or if you search for cloud advisory services, there are a lot of material out there which provides you that insight on cloud offerings, right? And you can also even learn to deploy cloud containers, right? Kubernetes service offerings and all. So that's available online. And even with IBM collaboration, I'm not sure what that level of collaboration is, but there are some in internal cloud learnings. So maybe something for us to take away and see if we can actually extend it, right?
What we will do is we will try to provide them some links so that they can do a self-paced study, and then we can guide them on that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
And the digital courses that you have so far have discussed, will they be more impactful? So I think what you need to learn, guys, is being in a ECE field or electronics field or a computer science field is more from having a background, but you'd be amazed that there is no restriction of these digital courses to be only learned by computer science people or by I mean, electronics people, right? It doesn't restrict anyone. And the fact of the matter is, more and more, if you look at job opportunities, you will actually see ECE students more than computer science students in the cloud deployment when it comes to the actual multi-cloud architecture and hardware deployment or cloud understanding of the configuration of more of electronics background than computer science background, because computer science background people are more interested in coding development and all that stuff where I mean a lot of interaction is required, whereas I see a lot of electronics people actually showing interest in cloud deployments, cloud infrastructure setup, right, cloud configuration, multi-cloud design, and how all the hardware sits out together. So that's really a lot of space there for electronic students, right? I mean, there is no restriction to say if you're electronic students, you will not be considered, because everyone is equal once you pass out. Your background is only as good as of what your undergrad is. The value what you bring out of it is of how you define it from now on. I mean, I've seen my friends personally in my own career where along with me, even mechanical and electronic students are at the same place where I have been right now. So your actual restriction is your mind. If you open
Exactly.
up, you actually if you have an open mind, and if you don't think about I'm an electronic student, I should not be worrying about this. As long as you remove that thinking, everything is in your control, right? There's nothing which you cannot achieve.
Right, Dharma, as you rightly said, we should not restrict ourselves to any of our thoughts saying that we are an X branch. No. Let's go back and see about 6, 7 years, 8 years back. You'd be surprised to see even a civil engineering students were part of this particular IT. So
Yes, sir,
learning
exactly.
is more important, okay?
It is actually one should have the desire, sir, to learn
Desire,
new things.
that's more important.
Yes, sir.
So I mean, no
And
one
as
is
I
stopping you,
mentioned at the
right?
beginning
The
of this
wo- and
call,
the same Google, the same courses are available for every one of you. What they have learned, what you have learned, brings a unique perspective of what you can offer to. But if you have the desire and if you have the passion, every course is available for you to learn, and there is nothing which you can start even right now to be at par with the computer science students, and the actual cutting edge advantage what they might have right now from a programming course point of view. There is only a short life point, right? I mean, it is hardly a short life period, because after a year, if you also spend the effort, everyone is at the same level. Not in a year right now, given the digital platform available right now, hardly a matter of 3 4 months when everyone
exactly.
can be at the same platform.
Exactly. Within 3, 4 months, your uh, perspective would completely change yourself. Huh? And as I said at the beginning of this course, okay, it's our perception, number one. Number two, we need to get ready what industry requires. That should be our focus. But don't look at something which has gone wrong or some technologies which have been thought about 3, 4, 5 years back. Always focus on the latest technology. Keep reading. And if you have any doubts, you can come back to us. Tomorrow we will leave our contacts and we will try to mentor also any if any support required.
So basically, technology goes on varying from time to time, sir. It all the adaptability one should possess actually from time to time to own the change in technology, sir.
Correct.
So there is a question. Uh, which are the Indian industries using their cloud services and purpose?
So as I said, every client is now looking for cloud
Correct.
solutions. So it doesn't limit it to only Indian industries, but if you're interested, Asian Paints, Airtel, Bharti, right, Vodafone, and
Yes.
also even
Yes.
even Heritage, every client out there, pretty much everyone is thinking about cloud, and one way or the other has already deployed cloud offerings on their landscape. So there is no substitute, by the way, guys, right? So it's not like it is an option. So you have to think about it, right? The future is cloud. So I mean, you need to think about it such a way that at the end of the day, every client will end up adopting to cloud services sooner than later.
Yes, sir.
Some clients are before, some clients are after, but pretty much every client is already on their journey to the cloud right now. And the purpose is, one, from a digital transformation point of view, either to digitize their operations, two, to have a better integration between your front office and back office, three, in terms of actually coming up with new product offerings to your clients in an innovative way. Four, to virtualize your services so that being an actual, I mean, especially given the COVID situation, think about it. If you have a virtualized software or virtualized hardware with cloud offering, you don't have to worry about going to the office and maintaining it, right? You can actually manage it from anywhere, and you have also a high chance of high recovery and a high availability and disaster recovery, which means that your downtime on the business is very less, next to almost, if you think about it, cloud uptime is 99.999999%.
Yes,
So
sir.
which means hardly in a week or in a month you're not supposed to go down more than 1 hour, right? So that's the level of resiliency what we are talking about in the industry out there. Can you be more informative and be emphasized on business analysts? So see, business analyst is how you actually contribute towards an organization. That's a role. What we are trying to provide you with is the trends in the industry on how your artificial intelligence or machine learning and cloud services can help address a client requirement. But in terms of what is around business analyst role is to, once you understand the business use case and once you understand the solution offering, your business analyst role is more like a bridge where you communicate with the stakeholders to understand the requirements, and you pass on that in a language which is understandable to the IT or technical people. So you have both acumen of a business side and an acumen of technical side, and being a bridge to ensure you translate the functional requirements into technical requirements, right? And the other question is, apart from IBM, which cloud provider is best? See, um, everything, right? I mean, there is no one best answer to it. AWS, Google, everyone has a major presence in the industry when it comes to actually making sure what can provide, right? And how do you decide whether what is best is completely use case based? Because, for example, in terms of actual offering of, let's say, if you're trying to look at open source software, IBM Cloud is the best. If you're trying to look at proprietary software where it has its own built-in, I mean, additional AI, ML software services coming through, then Google or AWS offers you better. From a cost perspective, in terms of pay as you go offering, Alibaba Cloud offers you better, right? So what is difference between AWS and Google? Again, as I said, there are different service offerings, different cloud scenarios. Every cloud, pretty much a basic foundation is the same. It is not that it is drastically different. It is just the cost model, offering model, what kind of as a service offering you have, what kind of strategy as an organization you have. Are you a Google a product sort of favorite kind of person from a leadership point of view who will want to have all together within one Google sort of product? Or are you open to any technology but looking at features? It is more of a depending decision which you need to take as a stakeholder, because as a platform, pretty much every offering from IBM, Google, or AWS provides you pretty much the same offering, right? Who will decide which type of development model has to be used? So it's a project based decision normally, right? When you actually start in a project, the project owners or the stakeholders along with the client sit together, they review the maturity model, they decide whether the client stakeholders are prepared to handle the project in agile or not,
Right.
and then accordingly deploy the actual agile model versus waterfall model depending on what is to be needed, right? uh, so
Sir,
yeah,
what is the common technology among these different cloud offering companies? So that the student can make himself ready for any
technology.
cloud.
Yes, so technology depends on operating system at the end of the day from a cloud configuration point of view, right? So Red Hat is the maximum used one, Red Hat Linux operating system, right? Then you have your proprietary softwares coming through with Google and with AWS. So they do use their own proprietary technology. But what is helpful is service offerings, which, as I mentioned, right, of either mainly around knowledge or mainly around domain knowledge, that should be good enough too.
So just to add, Red Hat is part of
.NET framework as
IBM.
well.
Red Hat is part of IBM, and last year that is one of the biggest acquisitions that we have taken place. Close to about $38 billion were spent on those takeover.
There is a question about AI that AI questions can be taken tomorrow session. Sir, any personal questions to you, sir? Dharma, sir. Any questions to your personal chat, sir?
No, I have not received any personal message.
So, thank you very much, sir, for appearing on various topics to our student community like business model innovation, cross-channel integration, insight from analytics, digitally enabled supply chain, network workforce, IBM cloud application modernization, IBM garage method, and roles of, offered by different companies, and career path awareness, digital transformations with the clouds, and roles available in cloud career. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable time and your valuable insights, so that our students can make themselves ready for the cloud career. Thank you, sir. Now I request our director, Professor Kailash Rao, sir, to give his closing remarks.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It has been all along the time actually very much absorbing, sir. The kind of session what that has been provided. Really, I hope students are very much enthused to take the things forward, sir. So we would be looking forward for tomorrow's session on data science, as you have told a while ago. So definitely, students would come forward with more enthusiasm to participate tomorrow's webinar session, sir. So thank you very much. Actually, we appreciate your time, sir, for providing this session in an effective way, sir. Really, actually, we have got so many insights during the session being taken from your end. So once again, we thank you on behalf of Malaradi College of Engineering and Technology, sir. Thank you for the day, sir. Thank you. We'll be
Thank
looking
you. Thank
forward
you.
for tomorrow's session, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you
very
all, and
much.
see you tomorrow. Thanks,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you very much.
Good day. Cheers.